Here we go with some utter nonsense. This is the gossip columnist of news journalism. So there's a report over at On3 that the Bears might consider Marcus Freeman for their coaching vacancy. Now, this comes on the heels of Marcus Freeman about to coach in the national championship game and talking about a guy who isn't even 40 years old, who has, wait for it, never coached in the NFL, hasn't been there before. He's just been a college guy. He is in his third full season as a head coach for Notre Dame. All right. So I'm supposed to believe that Marcus Freeman would be... This is just something that grabs people's attention, and I understand why. And maybe the Bears really do. I have no idea. I don't know who reported the story. I don't know what the sources are. I just saw the headline and realized, man, we're doing this again. We're doing this again. On3 had a similar report of Dan Lanning could be a target by the NFL. Yeah, there's no juice to that, and there's no real juice to this. When you look at Marcus Freeman, when you watch the way he talks about his team, do you ever get the sense that he's got one foot out the door, that he'd jump for another job? Marcus Freeman has pulled off a phenomenal stretch of coaching, which is perhaps why the Bears are saying, should that guy be our head coach? Now, the Bears are a poorly run organization, so they would hire, anybody. I mean, they interviewed Pete Carroll for their head coaching vacancy. As a Seahawks fan myself, I can tell you, Pete should have stopped being a head coach in the NFL about 3 to 4 years ago. But the Bears interviewed him anyway because, well, they're the Bears. They don't really know what they are doing. There's nothing about Marcus Freeman to the Bears that makes any sense for two reasons. Reason number one, he's got a great situation at Notre Dame. Coaches that have made the jump from college to the NFL, in the most high-profile examples that go from being a head coach in college to head coach in the NFL, there tends to be another circumstance driving them away from the school they are at. Matt Rule was at Baylor. That's a good job. It's not a premier program in college football. So he went and tried his hand at the NFL. Now, of course, he's back at Nebraska and got them to their first bowl game and won said bowl game for the first time since 2016. When Pete Carroll left USC to go to the Seahawks, the NCAA was starting to crack down. And when Jim Harbaugh left Michigan to go to the Chargers, the NCAA was starting to breathe down his neck. There's always something there. There's always some other reason that drives a coach out of a premier college job. And Notre Dame is a premier college job. Marcus Freeman's got a great gig. You know, they play a Power 4 caliber schedule every year. They don't have a conference championship game to deal with, which means they can't get a bye, so they get a home playoff game. Oh no, home teams did not lose a playoff game. Texas wins, Notre Dame wins, Ohio State wins. Like, the teams that played on their home field, they all got to win. So he's now in the national championship game. And the second reason, I don't see this as having any sort of legs to it or any sort of seriousness, is Marcus Freeman is way too young. Way too young. I know there's a youth movement that is incredibly popular. Mike Macdonald of my beloved Seahawks, by the way, is the youngest coach in all of football. Well, Mike Macdonald had been in the NFL for a couple of years. Are even the Bears going to go after a guy in a serious way who has not even hit 40 years old, who's been a head coach for 3 seasons, who is putting on, as I have said, and still continue to believe, the best coaching performance of anybody in the playoffs? Yes, he is all of those things. But at the same time, that doesn't make any sense for Chicago. That's not what Chicago needs. They need someone who's proven for their young quarterback. Caleb Williams needs to be matched with a veteran coach who you hire and everyone can look at it objectively and say, yeah, okay, that has a good chance to work. Nothing's ever guaranteed to work in the NFL, but you're gambling on a young quarterback right now, and you don't need to then be gambling on your head coach at the same time. A head coach, by the way, who comes from the defensive side of the ball. You need to get Caleb Williams right. That's where the Bears' focus has to be. Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, that's the guy who Caleb Williams needs. He doesn't need Marcus Freeman. He needs someone that could give him a stable situation at offensive coordinator who's competent, because they haven't had that yet. Now, I do trust Marcus Freeman's decision-making more than Matt Eberflus, their now fired head coach, but he set the bar incredibly low. I mean, that game against the Lions, just chef's kiss of the Bears are a mess, and Eberflus was not the right guy. But that's too many variables to try to work out. So I don't believe that Freeman is any sort of serious candidate for a head coaching vacancy in the NFL, a place where he's never coached. Lanning, for the same reason. He's never coached in the NFL. He's never expressed any interest other than Lanning's from Kansas City, and he's a Chiefs fan, has been for a long time. That Chiefs job coming open? Yeah, I don't think so. And here's a third reason. Before you take a job in the NFL, which in many respects is seen from a coaching standpoint as more difficult than coaching in college from a schematic standpoint, are you going to take that job before you feel like you're ready? Marcus Freeman's been a head coach for 3 years. Jim Harbaugh had been to the NFL once before. Pete Carroll had been in the NFL and won at USC for a long time. Matt Rule had rebuilt Temple, had rebuilt Baylor, and wanted to try it in the NFL. Marcus Freeman is having an outstanding season, an outstanding playoff run. Do you think he would even feel ready to take that job? That's a real consideration for coaches, by the way. It's an incredibly real consideration. And Pete Carroll didn't leave until he won a national championship. Harbaugh didn't leave until he won a national championship. Matt Rule left before that, and it didn't work out. So I don't give a lot of thought to the idea, other than obviously what I've discussed on this particular segment, to the idea that Marcus Freeman, just because he's having a great stretch and a great playoff run, I bet you such rumors, speculation, articles, whatever, what have you, I bet you that gets tamped down after the national championship game, because I think Ohio State is winning, and I think they're winning comfortably. Their defense is just too good. And Notre Dame's defense is really good. Notre Dame has to play that national championship game like Michigan. They should study that film and say, how can we do that? And then cross their fingers and hope Ohio State comes out with that same sort of game plan and makes the same self-inflicted mistakes that they had in the semifinal game against Texas. That's what Notre Dame has to hope for here. But they have to jimmy their way to a national championship. Ohio State does not. I think Notre Dame has hit their ceiling, and they deserve the opportunity. I'm not saying that they don't, or we should retcon and say, no, they shouldn't have been in the playoff to begin with. Nope, not making that sort of argument, despite a historic loss in the college football playoff. The two biggest upsets of the season, two of the biggest upsets, by the way, didn't end up keeping teams from arriving in the national championship game. But keep telling me how the playoff has not devalued the regular season in any sort of way. But I think Marcus Freeman is great. I think he's happy where he is. I think he should be happy where he is. I see no reason why the Bears and Marcus Freeman make any sort of sense.